Dust storm. I never had gone to see the show if I had known a storm like this would come. I didn't know when going in, but coming out a darker night I'd never seen. I bumped into a box beside the palace door and scraped my shins. Then tripped on something in my path, I don't know what, and walked into a phone pole, then bruised my cheek. The first car that I met was sideways in the road, bowed down, my eyes near shut, trying to keep the dust out. I saw his headlights just before I reached him. The driver called me over and I felt my way following his voice. He asked me how I kept the road. I feel it with my feet, I shouted over the roaring wind. I walked along the edge, one foot on the road and one on the shoulder, and desperate to get home. He straightened out his car and straddled tires on the road and off, and slowly pulled away. I kept along. I know that there were others on the road. From time to time I hear someone cry out. Their voice rolls like ghosts on the howling wind. No one could see. I stopped at neighbors just to catch my breath and made my way from town, out to our farm. Everyone said stay, but I guess my father would come out to find me if I didn't show, and get himself lost in the raging dust and maybe die, and I didn't want to burden my soul. Brown earth rained down from sky. I could not catch my breath. The way the dust pressed on my chest and wouldn't stop. The dirt blew down so thick it scratched my eyes and stung under my skin. It plugged my nose and filled inside my mouth. No matter how I pressed my lips together, the dust made muddy tracks across my tongue. But I kept on spitting out mud, covering my mouth, clamping my nose, the dust stinging the raw and open stripes and scarring on my hands. And after some 3 hours, I made it home. Inside, I found my father's note that said he'd gone to find me, and if I should get home, to just stay put. I hollered out the front door and the back. He didn't hear. I didn't think he would. The wind took my voice and busted into 1,000 pieces. So small the sound blew over Ma and Franklin's grave, thinner than a sigh. I waited for my father's through the night, coughing up dust, cleaning dust out of my ears, rinsing my mouth, blowing mud out of my nose. Joe de la Flor stopped by around 4 to tell me they found one boy tangled in barbed wire fence, another smothered in a dirt of dust. After Joe left, I thought of the famous Lyndon Burrs and how their baby was killed and never came back to them. I wondered if my father would come back. He blew it in around 6 a.m. It hurt. The sight of him, brown with dirt, his eyes as red as raw meat, his feet bruised from walking in worn shoes, stepping where he couldn't see on things that bit and cut into his flesh. I tried to scare up something we could eat, but couldn't keep the table clear of dust. Everything I set down for our breakfast was covered before we took a bite. And so we chewed the grit and swallowed, and I thought of the cattle, dead from mud in their lungs, and I thought of the tractor, buried up into the steering wheel, and Pete Guyman. And I couldn't even recognize the man, sitting across from me, sagging in his chair, his red hair, gray and stiff with dust, his face deep lines of dust, his teeth streaked down. I turned the plates and glasses upside down, crawled into bed and slept. March 1935.
Broken promise. It rained a little everywhere but here. Motherless. If Ma could put her arm across my shoulder sometime, or stroke back my hair, or sing me to sleep, making the soft sounds, the reassuring noises, that no matter how bridal and sharp life seemed, no matter how bridal and sharp she seemed, she was still Mama who loved me, then I think I wouldn't be so eager to go. Following in his steps. Hayden Barley Nye's wife Fonda died today, 2 months after she lost her man. The cause of death was just anemia, but I think she couldn't go on without Hayden. When Ma died, I didn't want to go on either. I don't know. I don't feel the same now. Not exactly. Now that I see that one day comes after another and you get through them, one measure at a time, but I'd like to go. Not like Fonda Nye. I don't want to die. I just want to go away out of the dust.
Heartsick. The hard part is in spite of everything. If I had any boy court me, it'd be Mad Dog Craddock. But Mad Dog can have any girl. Why would he want me? I'm so restless. My father asks what's going on with me. I storm up to my room, leave him alone, standing in the kitchen. If Ma was here, she would come up and listen, and then later she would curl beside my father and assure him that everything was all right and soothe into his farmer's sleep. My father and I, we can't soothe each other. I'm too young, he's too old, and we don't know how to talk anymore, if we ever did. April 1935. Skin. My father has a raised spot on the side of his nose that never was there before and won't go away. And there's another on his cheek, and 2 more on his neck, and I wonder, why the heck is he fooling around? He knows what it is. His father had those spots too. April 1935. Regrets. I never go by Arlie's anymore. Still, every week, he comes to school to teach, and sometimes I bump into Vera or Miller Rice or Rad Dog. They are always kind. They ask after my father. They ask how my hands are feeling. I cross my arms in front of me tight so my scars won't show. These days, Mad Dog looks at me halfway between picking a fight and kindness. He walks with me a ways some afternoons, never says a word. He's quiet once the other girls go off. I've had enough of quiet men. I ought to keep clear of Mad Dog, but I don't. April 1935.
Fire on the rails. I hate fire, hate it, but the entire Oklahoma panhandle is so dry, everything is going up in flames. Everything too ready to ignite. Last week the school caught on fire. Damage was light on account of it being caught early. Most kids joked about it next day, but it terrified me. I could hardly go back in the building. And this week, 3 boxcars in the train yard burned to ash. Jim Goin and Harry Kessler spotted the fire, and that was a miracle considering the fierceness of the dust storm at the time. The fire boys tore over, but they couldn't put the blaze out without water, and water is exactly what they didn't have. So they separated the burning cars and moved them down a siding away from any little thing that might catch in the flames hot. It was all they talked about at school. The dust blew, they say, so you'd think it would have smothered the fire out, but the flames, crazy in the wind, licked away at the wooden frames of the 3 boxcars until nothing remained but warped metal and twisted rails, scorched dirt, and charred ties. No one talks about fire right to my face. They can't forget how fire changed my life, but I hear them talking anyway. April 1935. The mail train. They promised through rain, heat, snow, and gloom, but they never said anything about dust. And so the mail got stuck for hours, for days, on the Santa Fe because mountains of dust had blown over the tracks because blizzards of dust blocked the way. And all that time, as the dust beat down on the cars, a letter was waiting inside a mailbag. A letter from Aunt Ellis, my father's sister, written just to me, inviting me to live with her in Lubbock. I want to get out of here, but not to Aunt Ellis and not to Lubbock, Texas. My father didn't say much when I asked what I should do. Let's wait and see, he said. What's that supposed to mean? April 1935.
Migrants. We'll be back when the rain comes, they say, pulling away with all they own, straining the springs of their motor cars. Don't forget us. And so they go, fleeing the blowing dust, fleeing the fields of brown-tipped wheat barely ankle-high, and sparse as the hair on a dog's belly. We'll be back, they say, pulling away toward Texas, Arkansas, where they can rent a farm, pull in enough cash, maybe start again. We'll be back when it rains, they say, setting out with their bed springs and mattresses, their cook stoves and dishes, their kitchen tables and their milk goats tied to their running boards and rickety cages, setting out for California, where even though they say they'll come back, they just might stay, if what they hear about that place is true. Don't forget us, they say, but there are so many leaving, how can I remember them all? April 1935.